face the door. Saturday went by and I heard nothing. I still banged the locker door every now and then just in case I missed the sound of people. I slept some of the time, but I tried to stay awake the best I could. I didn't want to sleep and miss my chance of hearing someone who was looking for me. After a lot more crying and trying to escape, I eventually gave up hope. It was getting dark outside again. I expected to die that night. I was too tired to fight it anymore, and I gave up. I fell asleep again. When I woke up, it was still dark and I was still trapped. The rest of the night and all of Sunday was about the same. I called for help somewhat and slipped in and out of consciousness. When I cried, there were no more tears and I was no longer peeing myself. I was dehydrated. When night finally came Sunday evening, I began to have hope again. It had been 2 full days by this point. I only had one night left, and if I survived, I would be released Monday morning. That night, I didn't even bother trying to escape or calling for help. I just tried to sleep. Sometime during the night, I woke up and couldn't sleep anymore. So I just waited for the first sound of people. I figured the janitor would be the first person I would hear when he came in to turn on the lights. Eventually, the sun came up and shortly afterwards, the hallway lights turned on. I pulled my jeans back into place so I wouldn't be exposed. That was an awful feeling. Cold, wet jeans against my you-know-what. I started calling for help in my hoarse voice and kicking the locker. No one came. Then sometime later, about an hour, I was told I heard someone in the hallway. I once again called for help and kicked the locker. It was a teacher. He came to the locker and started talking to me. I told him I had been trapped since Friday and really wanted out. He told me he would go get help and would be right back. A few minutes later, the principal and janitor show up, and the janitor cut the lock, and I was free. I was then taken to the hospital where I stayed until the next day. I was of course dehydrated. I had a broken toe from kicking the locker, bruises on my hands from hitting the locker and rashes from wearing urine-soaked jeans. I stayed home from school the rest of the week. As for what had taken place outside while I was trapped, my boyfriend came looking for me like always, about 15 minutes after school had ended. He came to the top of the steps, looked down the hallway, and didn't see me. He waited at the top of the steps to see if I would show up. He could see down to his locker and to the other stairway. After waiting for me for about 10 minutes, he figured that I must have left, so he left and went home. Unfortunately for me, he didn't need to get anything out of his locker that day because he had done most of his homework during study hall and already had what he needed to take home with him already. That is something I should have thought about, because about half of the time we would meet at his locker, he wouldn't even open it. After school, the janitors swept the hallways, cleaned the bathrooms and took out the trash. The upstairs hallway wasn't very big. It only had 6 classrooms and 1 boys' and 1 girls' bathrooms. He said that it only takes them about 20 minutes to clean it, and that Friday they had cleaned it about a half an hour after school had ended. They said they never heard me inside the locker. It must have been when I had fallen asleep or when I was trying to not be noticed. My parents weren't worried about me until Sunday evening. The reason was because I had recently asked if it was okay for me to have a 2-night sleepover at my friend's house for her birthday. I was going to go there right after school to help set up for the party on Saturday, spend the night out to the party Saturday, help clean up and stay the night again. It was actually a month away, but neither of my parents remembered the date I had asked about or the name of my friend. So they figured that the sleepover was that weekend, and since they didn't know which friend, they didn't know who to call to check up on me. Then, when I wasn't home Sunday evening, they started to worry. My mom started calling my friends and finally found out that the sleepover wasn't until the next month. None of my friends had seen me, and she checked with my boyfriend, who also hadn't seen me. It was around 7 p.m. Sunday evening when she called the police. They came to the house and took the report. They started searching for me, but their search didn't make it to the school before the teacher found me. Looking back on this event, I can laugh about it now, because it was my own stupidity that got me into that mess. I can say that it did make me stronger as a person. Oddly enough, I'm not claustrophobic after that. If anything, I have even less fear of small space, because I tolerated such a small space for such a long time. Although I would never want to do it again, looking back on it, I'm glad it happened to me because I have learned to be more careful and value my life. I had times when I was suicidal when I was a teenager. After suffering in the locker for 2.5 days, I never had suicidal thoughts again. It had already felt like I had died and had been reborn again. Now you kids who are still in school, wow, that makes me sound old. Lol, be careful messing with lockers. If you have some reason to get inside one, There is no good reason for that. Make sure you have someone you trust who can help you get out. I should have told a friend what I was up to just in case things went wrong. It was an impulsive decision that I didn't think through completely, and I suffered greatly because of it.